I don't usually dislike change, but last spring, I felt like rather than being invited on a trip to go to the Amazon, that I was taken forcibly from my home and dropped against my will into the Amazon jungle. Now I'm all up for a trip to the Amazon, but a little planning is something that I give great value to. And so as I was thinking about going, not from being dropped into the Amazon, but being invited on a trip to the Amazon as I moved into a hybrid model in the summer, and thinking about moving into what could be a very flexible type of instructional approach coming into the fall and spring of this coming year, I thought, what things do I need to think about? And so I did what we all do. At the end of the semester, I did some reflection. How did the semester go? What things did I learn from it that can make my coursework stronger the next semester, that can make my teaching better for the next semester? And so as I was reflecting on things, I thought, what are some 2 key reflections that I need to work on as I move forward into this kind of brave new world out there? And so I wanted to rethink some things. I wanted to rethink some of the organization of the content, perhaps some sequencing of assignments, and then the assignments themselves. In addition, I wanted to reprioritize and look at whether or not I needed to do some work there around building class culture, what technology tools would be used and how would I use them, and then reprioritizing perhaps some things around assessment design. And so here I wanted to share with you some of the key questions that I use to think through some of this reflection process. So I wanted to rethink the organization of content. So here was my thinking question. How can I cluster learning outcomes around a few key concepts? So we all have our syllabi, and we look at that, and that's our guiding through the content of the course. But we all have other things that we interject and that we want to put into it. Unfortunately, that can become a very unwieldy list of a lot of things that we just need to sort of dump into students. And instead, I wanted to think not what's the magnitude of the amount of things, but how can I take all of that and put it into some concepts, key concepts, and then use those to build those key concepts. So that kind of helped me to rethink the organization of the content. Let me have these few key concepts, and then I'll build toward those major concepts within my discipline. Then how did I need to rethink sequencing? So here were some thinking questions. What needs to be sequenced? What is it in what I'm instructing and giving students practice in that needs to be, you master this before you master this? And that there is a sequence, and that sequence is critical. But there are other things as to what can be overlaid. It's not so much that you have to learn this before you learn this, but it's that once you learn these 2 things, can you see the connection between them? So can you overlay those things, or even among them, because it may be multiple things? And then are there things that are critical and they're important, but they really are sort of standalone ideas or concepts? And that helped me to rethink how I was going to sequence some of my materials, because some of those lend themselves much more readily to some online-based learning, and others more naturally and could be much more effectively taught through a face-to-face environment. And then I wanted to rethink some assignments. And so this was a guiding question. How will I need to revise assignments, or how I set up for assignments to accommodate the current conditions? Now, the current conditions are something we have to consider, but I wanted to expand that even more and think, yes, I'm doing this with the idea of the current conditions, but how can I rethink these assignments in a way that also strengthens them no matter what the current conditions? And so as I was rethinking assignments, yes, I was locked into how can I do that in a way that can accommodate what the likely scenarios are in this new hybrid model that flex model that we may be living in. But then I didn't want to just rethink them for this short period of time. Let me actually rethink these assignments in a way that will meet the current conditions, but will also make them better stronger assignments that support student learning in a much more powerful way. And then to reprioritize some things. Now, I'm one of those people that I believe that building class culture is so important. To spend the first day or two of each semester building the community of learners, much more so than here's the syllabus, here's all the due dates. I want the students to know how we do business in this classroom. What is it like to participate as a a member of the learning community of this class? And so how do I build a strong community of learners? By creating student-teacher and student-student relationships as quickly as possible. How do I maximize that and put that as a really top priority so that if we were to have to go to some sort of virtual world, or if we're going to have students who might have to join us remotely at given times, that community of learners is already in place and they know how to support one another in really meaningful ways. And then reprioritizing the technology. And so here was the thinking question. What handful of high impact digital tools are most important for students to learn as early as possible? And how do I provide early practice with these? I find myself struggling often with the idea of using technology in the classroom because there's so many tools out there. And sometimes it's not a matter of do I have enough, but I have so many. And so how do I identify those high impact ones that are going to support the learning of my particular content? And then how do I engage them in those tools in early, meaningful ways so that actually becomes a tool where they're practiced, they're comfortable, and they know how to use it to support their own learning, so that if we have to go to some sort of remote environment or they individually have to, they are comfortable with that technology and they see how that technology really supports their learning. And I'm comfortable and I have kind of had an opportunity to work with it in a way that I know I can maximize its impact on their learning. And then reprioritizing assessments. So some questions. How do I focus the assessment on concepts? Remember, I've identified these key concepts. So now I want to make sure that my assessments are measuring those key concepts. And how do I do that at the highest levels of Bloom's taxonomy? And then what products will provide the best evidence of mastery at this high level? So how do I look at, here are the big concepts of the learning. How do I measure those in meaningful products that make sure that I'm engaging students at those levels of analysis and evaluation and creation, not just can they recall information, but how do I do that at the highest levels of Bloom's taxonomy? So hopefully this idea of kind of just using the reflection that we all do, but targeting it in some very specific ways really helped me to move the course forward in a positive way for the summer hybrid model, but then continue to guide additional thinking and reflection as I move into the fall and spring semester looking at this flex model.